Warning: the following is extremely addictive content. The original Savage podcast may cause increased levels of success, happiness, and completely transform your life. You've been warned.
Welcome, everybody. It is another episode of the original Savage podcast. I cannot wait for this one. This one's going to be so much fun. I'm so excited to have Andrew on board. Man, this is one that I've been looking forward to. It really is. And so, I'm not going to take up too much time. Uh, I'm just going to dive right in and let you introduce yourself. So, Andrew, why don't you tell everybody about yourself, what you do, and all that good stuff.
Yeah, so I'm Coach Andrew Banner. Josh, thanks for having me on your show. Super excited myself. But my background, my entire life, I've been focused on helping golfers play better golf. And so I've done that through a couple of different vehicles. Initially, when I was in grad school, I was an assistant golf coach. Then I got into golf instruction and golf fitness for the past 15, 16 years. When the pandemic hit, I actually put some focus and took my business online to where I'm working with golfers now globally using the combination of fitness and swing coaching together to help amplify results.
Awesome. Isn't it incredible what technology and social media can do for businesses and us as professionals and things like that, just when it's used correctly, right? Like, I think obviously there's way too many people out there that obviously use it in different directions and for different reasons, and but when it's done correctly, when it's done right, it is so powerful. And I think that gets lost a lot.
Absolutely. It's really interesting because I think a lot of people on the outside would think that I'm super technical. But I would argue that I'm like a mixture of old school, but using online virtual to quite honestly be a more effective coach. In the traditional world, I was used to spending an hour of time with a student and then not communicating with that student until they were standing in front of me on their next session. Now, fast forward to today, and I would say I went from being an instructor to an online coach to where now my students have a lot more access to me. They're checking in with me. I'm critiquing their movement patterns, their swing technique to ensure that they're practicing the correct way, one, but two, elevating the way that they understand their own golf swing so they can be better at self assessment.
It's so funny. I talk to people now, and like, being somebody that's worked remotely and coached and talked to businesses and everything that I've done in the last really since COVID, like you said, and done the remote thing. It is so weird to me to think that people still do stuff in person because it's just not effective.
No.
I mean, in some cases, yes, there has to be that see, feel, touch situation, right?
Yeah.
But it's the same thing that, like, I remember when I was at Best Buy, when I as a kid, right? I worked at Best Buy, like 15, 16-year-old kid, right? And that's right when Amazon was kind of coming out. And Amazon said, use Best Buy as your showroom, go touch it and feel it in Best Buy, and then come buy it online, right? And like back then, it was like, wow, that's a bold statement, and that's kind of crazy. But now it is so much reality that it's like, yeah, okay, if you got to go touch and feel something, go touch and feel it. But when it comes down to like the meat and potatoes, online is so much better, so much more effective. And especially from a sales standpoint or a leadership standpoint, like driving from person to person on your team, like if you're managing several, different locations or whatever it is, driving from this one to this one to this one, having to stay at hotels and be gone from your family, obviously creates mental stress, creates a lot of different things that are bad and for your, persona, right? If you are super stressed out because let's say you're gone for a week and you missed two or three, let's say there was a golf match your kid had, right? Or a baseball tournament or something, and you were gone for that week and you didn't get to see them because you were bouncing from office to office to office. When you get to that last office and you just miss your kid, like hit the winning home run, or you miss your, like, you're probably not going to be in the same state of mind as like the first person that you saw on the trip. And that's
Right.
going to affect how you treat people. It's going to affect how you're presenting yourself in sales when you're gone all day long, going from client to client to client. It might be 3 to 4 appointments that you can get through instead of 8 or 9 or however many, because it's so much more effective.
Yeah. Well, I mean, if you switch it to the focus and niche that I'm in, you know, guys that golf tend to be successful in life. And if they're successful, they're busy. And if a golf instructor's good at what they do, they're booked up. So how the heck do you get a student matched up with a busy golf instructor's schedule? It's not very convenient, not easy. And let's face it, meetings change, business changes. So it gets really hard on the client to get on the schedule. And I'm in the business of helping golfers get better. I want to produce faster results. And so the only way I know how to do that in this day and age is to give them more access to myself. And guess what? When you work with someone online, we're no longer scheduling time. It's no, put in your work, check in with me, and I'm going to get back to you in a very short amount of time. So now it's super convenient for the guy at home, but it's also convenient for me. And I can help truly get that golfer to move through the developmental process much more effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's just like, you're saying it's more access, but it's better access too, because it's, you can refer back to videos. You can have that backlog of videos where it's like, this person's been sending you videos of themselves for a year. And you go, hey, take a second and go back to the first video you sent me. Right. And they can do that. They can scroll like endless amounts of storage happen within DMs. I don't know. Look, we got to pay all kinds of money for like storage, as professionals or just in general, like your email and everything else. Oh, upgrade your storage. But in DMs, there's no limit. You just it keeps going, right?
It's funny you say that because, Josh, when I was in contact with my host provider for the app where I keep all my content, and like you said, everything that's exchanged with me and my students is stored. They can refer back to it. Well, the one day there was a glitch and they fixed it really quick. But the reason why the glitch happened was because there was so much content stored on my personal profile within their system. And they were like, dude, you communicate with your students so much. And I'm like, well, that is exactly who I want to be in the coaching space.
That's the point of it. Exactly. And that's exactly the point. That's the reason for it to be there. And it's that, again, access. Like you said, it's that access that really makes, everything kind of happen. So with all that being said, I think that leads really well into what I normally start the podcast off with is, in your opinion, as a teacher, as a trainer, somebody that works with, all different walks of life, again, mostly successful, like you said, in business, in athletics, whatever it might be in life, in your opinion, what do you see? What do you think is the number one like catalyst for somebody to exhibit real lasting change? Think of it as taking performance to a next level. Some people can think of it in that direction, or just making a change in general from career to career, like and making it stick. Like, in your opinion, what is that one catalyst, one thing that somebody has to do, has to think, whatever, to make that change, make that performance change?
I mean, it is really simple now that I'm online and remote. It's video confirmation that the feels are producing the mechanical changes in the golf swing. When the student sees their own swing and realizes how crazy the feel has to be to produce the change, that's when it clicks and that's when they can start repetitiously working on it to have the long-term change. When you remove video and you tell someone to do something, they think they're doing it right, but most likely they're not. And now they're grinding on it and it feels awkward, results aren't there, so they just go back to their old ways. So bring video feedback in. Again, call that technology, but that's about as basic as it gets. And that is huge for my clients to get actual results.
Yeah, it's internal perception versus external perception, right? So one of I've got a training on it. I've got tons of time talking about perception or perspective, whichever one you want to call it. Same thing in my book, and talking exactly about that. I even reference feel versus real in some videos, right? Because it is that internal feel, that internal perception versus what's real and actually happening, tangibly happening, and I'm making sure that those things align, right? Those things have to align in order to get you where you want to go. If
Yeah.
you think, if you think, oh, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm doing, this is what I'm doing, this is who I am, but everybody else sees something completely different, and there's a disconnect there, it's
Exactly.
gone.
Well, and so let me take visual to another level. So when I'm talking about making a change in a golfer's swing, I also want them to buy in. And so getting them to buy in requires me to show them what I call tour player similarities. So if there's an aspect of the golf swing that I'm trying to upgrade, I'm then going to show them two tour players doing the exact same motion that I'm asking them to work towards. So now they see it and they're like, oh, wow, Tiger Woods does this. Jordan Spieth does this. Maybe I should be too. And so
Yeah,
it's
and
the
it
what, the
got deep.
why, and the how. What to
Yeah.
do, why it's important to your golf swing, and how it needs to look on film to turn into that motion.
Well, it's funny you use the word buy in, right? Because people make purchases emotionally and then justify it rationally with logic or whatever, right? So emotionally, they're making the decision to listen to you and do what you're saying. And then they're rationalizing it by saying, okay, well, if this person does it, I have to do it. And it makes sense. And so it's the same thing. You say buy in, but it's the same thing that we go through when we're making purchasing decisions. It's the emotional of the why, and then it's the rationale to justify it to ourselves to say, okay, that was a good emotional decision, to then get the actual results of, like you said, buying in. It's the same in anything. And I think I would probably sum up, that's probably the answer to the question. Especially, for this episode, we're going to call it the answer to the question, is that buying in process of you have to believe in what you're doing. If you want to make a real change, you can't just say, okay, I want to change, or this is what I'm gonna do to change. You can't have the reason by itself, and you can't have the how by itself. It's got to be commitment to the process. It has to be, like you said, buying in.
Yeah, so Josh, buying in is the way you phrase it, which is the same as what I tell my students every single day. In your practice session, there has to be conviction. And conviction is buying in, knowing the what, knowing the why, knowing the how, and it's going to give you the results that you came to me for, right? You want to hit the ball more solid. You want a consistent ball flight. You want to shave strokes. Well, you need to have conviction in your process. And my job is to make you a more effective practicer because we all know to make long-term developmental change, it's going to take repetitions, quality repetitions, confirmed on film that you are doing it correctly. And now it's just rinse, wash, repeat.
And in your opinion as well, and through your experiences, because I know that this is what a lot of people think, right? Oh, well, this person is just more talented than me, or this person just has this. In your opinion, can everybody reach a certain level of performance? Let's for golf, let's say single digits. Okay.
Yeah.
Can everybody pretty much get to digits, or is it just the elite few, regardless of work ethic? Is everyone physically capable of getting to single digits?
I would say quick answer is yes. So it's truly trained and developed. The rate at which you get there, there's two inputs: it's effort and it's athleticism, right? I have guys that are early adopters, and I give them something, and 2 days later they have it. I give guys something, and it takes 3 months to get it. But either way, they're on a pathway towards scratch, and it gives me chills when I see students get there and they're like, man, this was a lot more efficient than I was used to. And let me be clear, taking a golf lesson doesn't mean you won't get there. But the problem I have found in the traditional model is that there is larger gaps of time in between a lesson. And the time in between the lesson is when the student needs to be working on it, grinding to get better. But because there is zero communication in between a golf lesson, there is less effective practice going on. So
Absolutely.
it's just simply a numbers game of going back to what we talked about, practicing correctly, confirming on video, to then having conviction that, yeah, I'm doing the right things and I know I'm going to benefit from this. Sure, they're going to show up, they're going to put in more work when they feel that way.
So you bring up a really good point, and something that I personally feel is a disconnect in the overall training and development world, not just in golf, in any sport, and also in business and career development and all of those things. And that is, I don't know if it's trainers' egos, if it's just a lack of design proper, like that it's not designed properly, whatever it might be. The issue is you're training somebody to be robotic and be the exact one thing, right? Is a lot of what's happening. It's, hey, do this, do this, do this, do this. And then they're reliant on the coach or reliant on the trainer to be there and say, hey, good job. Oh, no, don't do it that way. Instead of creating people that can solve their own problems and diagnose their own problems, yes, they're still going to need you. They're still going to need the coach. They're still going to need somebody outside, because there's going to be times where they can't figure it out. It just is going to be what it is, because we all get in that way where we're just not seeing it. And somebody from the outside can see it and be like, oh, dude, bang, done. Right. So I think that's, like you said, that difference in the traditional model of no communication and lesson here, lesson over there, a month apart, 2 months apart, 3 months apart, whatever it might be. And they played 10 times, and they're slowly getting worse and worse and worse and worse and worse because they don't know what's causing it. They're just trying, let me just try and figure it out. I don't know. He told me to do this. Yeah, but if they don't understand dynamically what that's, and I'm not comparing this to you because, again, you said you stay in touch with them, but just in general, like that typical mindset of like they just go back to what they were listening to and they're interpreting it themselves. Is, well, he said blue, so let me just blue. Let me find something blue to wear. You know what I mean? That's the issue. They're not.
Well, and I can tell you, Josh, just to give you an example. So in the online coaching world, the way I deliver my coaching model, the first check-in, I'm doing a deep dive assessment on their golf swing. Then I'm providing them a game plan focusing on upgrading one thing. And I tell them each and every time, each student, look, the game plan that I'm assigning you, your first check-in, I guarantee you there's a 95% chance you will not do it right. And so you're going to check in with me. I'm going to critique the way that you do the drills to make those changes until we get that right. And then you're going to be able to go grind on those details. And so if that is accepted as true, now imagine you came to me, saw me in person for an hour. I gave you what I want you to go work on, but I don't talk to you again until the next time you come and stand in front of me at a lesson. There was a 95% chance that you weren't going to do the drills correctly. Even though you did it well in front of me and you feel confident that you can go do it on your own, it's just not going to happen. A week goes by, now you hit your balls for the first time since that lesson. Life happens. You're like, okay, what was that feel? What did he tell me? Like, it's just down to 5% success rate. And so then on Sunday you get invited to go play in a money game, and you're like, I'm not hitting it very well. I'm just going to scrap everything that he told me and just kind of focus on what I was doing. Again, reverting back to old tendencies.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those things, and the reason I asked the question in the first place about, is everyone capable, is because I want to get rid of this mindset of, oh, it's not my fault, right? This accountability factor of, well, I'm just not able to do it the same way that person is, or this, that, or the other. There's all these reasons that people say they can't reach a certain level. Yes, I am aware that not everybody can be top 10% or top 5% or top 1%, because that's how percentages work. But that doesn't mean that everyone can't elevate where they're at to another level And again, it comes down to outworking the competition. It does not matter what it's in. You have to put in the work. And like you've said several times, it's proper work. You can't just be running in circles and assume like, oh man, I'm gonna get better because I'm working. Like,
Well, that's one of the
no,
biggest misconceptions in golf specifically. Guys come to me and they're like, Andrew, I practice 3 days a week. And I'm like, what are you practicing? And then that's instantly where they're like, well, I'm just thinking it's an effort based sport. Oh, you go hit a large bucket of balls 5 days a week, but you have zero practice. You have zero accountability to looking at the film to making sure that mechanical changes are there. You're wasting your time. And that's why these guys spin. And that's why the average golfer just doesn't get better. You get to about it. They say it's a 16 handicap. I have a hard time believing that's average from all the golfers I've ever worked with. But once they get to a 16, they rarely ever break 90. And the students that I get to work with, the only thing that I ask of them is show up, put in the work, and be coachable. You do those three things, we're going to go far. How fast? That depends on a couple factors. But at the end of the day, you're going to get better.
absolutely. And coachability is a huge thing that goes along with accountability, right? Because it's this. You think some people think they're a little bit of polar opposites, or they kind of work against each other or whatever. But in all reality, it's not, because again, I feel like every episode I'm talking about me coaching my 9-year-old, but it's the same thing. It's, listen, if you don't do the work, I'm not going to have my feelings hurt. It's on you. If Because I know you don't like to lose. So when you go and play basketball tomorrow, or when you go and have your next game and you miss your shots, ain't gonna hurt my feelings.
Yeah.
It's gonna hurt your feelings because you want to win. It ain't gonna hurt mine though. So if you're not doing what you're supposed to do, that's on you. It's the same thing in golf swing, baseball swing, football drills, whatever it is. Life. If you're not holding yourself accountable to do it the right way, then what's the matter? And it goes to, I was at basketball, my son's basketball practice last week, and I was standing there with a parent that I've coached his son in baseball, and his son doesn't want to play for anybody but me on baseball because of how I coach. And the parent was saying, how do you get River, which is my son's name, how do you get River to listen and do the practice the way you want him to? He said, my son wants to practice, but all he ever wants to do is see how far he can shoot it from.
Right.
Like you said, it doesn't matter if you're practicing 3 times a week. If all you're doing is trying to take half-court shots, not going to make you better in basketball. If all you're doing is hitting balls and expecting to get better, it's not going to happen. You have to have reasons. And that's where the coachability comes in to the accountability. Is the coach can help you set the goals. The coach can help you point out little checkpoints of, hey, once we get to here, then we can move to here. Then we can move to here. Let's try this first. Then we can move to here. So, like my son, again, I tell him that until he can make 100 shots from this one spot in a row, he can't move back.
Yep.
I don't care what you're doing. Get your form correct. Then you can shoot it from all over the map, like Steph Curry. Steph Curry can close his eyes, spin around 7 times, and if you point him in the direction of a basket, he's probably going to make it because his form is perfect. He knows exactly where the ball is going to go based on feel.
Yep. Well, I will tell you, from an accountability perspective, giving them the right framework is where it really starts in my program. And hear me out on this. So I want my students to be able to self-assess. I want them to look at video, right? And so because I know at the end of the day, they're going to go play on the golf course and they're going to have to make decisions and be able to react to, I hit this shot fat. What did Andrew teach me to do? Right? I want it to be more of an on-course learning versus, oh, I need to call Andrew and figure out what the problem is. I don't want him to rely on me. So the way I do that in my framework is every time they check in, I make sure that they're not only sending me videos, but they're answering 3 questions every single check-in. what are you working on? Why are you working on it? And how did it go? Because when they answer those three questions, guess what? They're learning. They're becoming more accountable. And then I also know that during their practice session, when they were looking at the video, they're like, I'm working on this because of X. And when they have that why behind it, again, they're more likely to get a lot out of that session and start to be able to take in the feedback mechanisms of ball flight, contact, and pair it with what they're seeing on video. When a traditional golfer is going to the range, hitting it fat, hitting it thin, hitting a slice, hitting a hook, but then not connecting it to the visual.
And it can go further than that too. Like if we're gonna dive super deep in like golf swing, obviously might lose some people, but that's something that some people also will go to the range and just hit from the mats and eliminate the fat miss,
Yep.
and then they think, oh, I'm hitting it great. Or they're just out there hitting balls and they don't know how far something is. And they go, oh, that looks about 170 yards. I'm smoking the ball today, man. I'm hitting it so far. And they're like, in all honesty, they're not. Or they go to Top Golf and they're hitting balls at Top Golf and don't realize that the balls are limited flight. They don't go as far as they're supposed to. And they're like, I'm not hitting it as far. Why am I not hitting it? Like, and that's the thing is, I think understanding your environment, understanding everything that goes into performance, that's where the coach comes in as well. Like, yes, you're there to perform. And I talk all the time to everybody that I work with, whether it's coaching baseball, whether it's helping my son basketball, whether it's business coaching, whether it's personal coaching, it doesn't matter. The number one thing that people have to understand is when it's time to perform, everything's out the window. React and just do it.
Yeah.
Do it. Stop trying to overanalyze everything. Stop worrying about everything else. Once you've put in the work, it's time to rely on that work.
100%. When you take and apply everything that I just said, I'll give it to you in a business perspective. So I'm an online coach. So I get my business from online leads. And so if I had really good sales this week or really poor sales this week, I have to go reverse engineer and figure out, okay, why were sales up this week? How was my lead generation? What was the quality of that content? How did the conversations go? And so it's kind of the same exact model, but put into a business mode. And so I call them KPIs, key performance indicators. I know exactly where I need to be from a numbers perspective to hit certain sales goals. And I'm always reverse engineering, looking at the data, understanding the data to understand the outcomes, which is
absolutely.
the exact same in golf and in basketball and whatnot. And you don't know this about me, Josh, but uniquely, when our call ends today, I'm headed to work a playoff high school game. So I'm a referee. I refereed Division I basketball for 5 years. I changed that all during the pandemic, but it's the exact same. I'm a professional at breaking down film. So I analyze golf swings. I analyze officiating in slow motion, breaking down my positioning to get the call right. If I'm out of position, my ability to get the call right decreases significantly. And so I can't just trust my feels. I have to go look at game tape afterwards and be like, there's a play at 8:22 on the clock in the third quarter that was just like, I know something was off. I want to go back and look at the film, and then I figure out why I was in the position that I was in.
Man, you just had like 2.5 hours to this podcast, because that's a whole nother thing that we can dive into. Like, again, perspective. If you're in the wrong position, it changes your perspective.
Correct.
If your perspective, that's where performance comes from. In my opinion, performance comes from perspective. And that's one of the most overlooked things in every situation, training, development, everything, is individuality and perspective. One, individuality, you got to be true to yourself. You got to believe in it, or you're never going to do it. Two, the perspective of it. If you don't understand perspective, you can't perform at the level that you need to, because something's going to be off. Again, that internal is going to be off, or the external is going to be off. Something is going to be off, because you don't understand how the perspectives are. And that's where a lot of people fall short, especially in the social media realm. Like, obviously, like you said, being the online coach, there's these metrics, right, that you have to hit for your business to grow. Same thing in the golf swing. There's these things, and I said it on a podcast previously. Whenever I played at a high level, played golf at a high level, it was numbers. Now, back 10 years ago and longer, when I was playing a little more serious than now, I didn't have the beauty of launch monitors. But now, if I'm going to go play, I don't play enough. I don't practice enough to because of my kids. But I'm only going to practice with a launch monitor there because I want to see actual numbers that I can't bullshit. I can't tell myself it went 300 yards and then look down and be like 150. I can't lie to it. Same thing. You can't lie when you're looking at the actual results. The same thing. Salespeople do it all the time. Ain't nothing changed. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I'm doing the exact same way I always do it. It was just an off month. No, something was different. It's not the client's fault. That's the trap that everybody falls into. Oh, it's the client's fault, or it's the lead's fault. It's something's fault, but there's something different.
Absolutely. Well, I mean, you get into sales calls, you better be breaking down film. Beauty of online, we're doing this. And breaking down film on a sales call to understand and when you're asking the right questions at the right time period. And really, at the end of the day, they're called sales calls, yes, but you're trying to figure out how you can help this person. And when you can uncover what is their pain point, and then you can realize what they've done in the past that has or has not helped them actually overcome that pain, you're just building a bigger gap. And it's our goal to say, look, I can help you. And if they feel like there's enough know, like, and trust in that process, there's a increased opportunity for you to get them across the door and turn them into a client. But it's not turning them into a client because I want to collect the money. Yeah, that's part of the business, but it's truly because I want to help this person. I want to help them. And if that's what drives my business, it'll be very prosperous for my clients. They'll turn into raving fans. It turns into an entire marketing machine because, again, in the online world, it's a lot easier to take a client testimonial and turn it into something that's viral that feeds the business.
Absolutely. And that's the thing too, is that's part of the perspective. Internally, you know who you are. You know my mission is help, 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 help. That's what I know in my soul makes me who I am and makes me good at what I do, right? And that's why other people externally can see it. I talk about it again all the time. People that watch this podcast are going to know that the things that I say, it's because it's so true. I'm not trying to repeat myself. It just keeps coming up in everyone's story that I talk to. The same things come up. When you know who you are, other people see who you are. The fake it till you make it culture online may work in certain situations. But when it comes down to separating money, you have to be genuine.
Yeah.
If somebody's going to invest in you, invest their time, invest their money, invest their knowledge, whatever it might be, whatever they're investing, all of those things are investments. If they're going to invest in you, you have to be genuine. They have to see exactly what you see when you look in the mirror.
Absolutely. I mean, when I started this business and I was learning how to do social media marketing, because I started from scratch. I might be a younger guy, but I didn't know how to build a business through social media at the time. The number one thing I committed to in my marketing was authenticity. I was like, people are either going to like me or they're going to dislike me. That doesn't bother me. But the ones that like me, I can help them. If you don't want to work with me, cool, go somewhere else, find a different solution. But if what I'm bringing to the table sounds like it could be a good option for you, I'm going all in on you. So that's like, I want to understand what you want from this game. If you're willing to show up, put in the work, and be coachable, I'll help you get there.
Oh yeah, it's about that, developing that loyal following, right? And I've been a fan of the social media marketing, not necessarily the Instagram, the TikTok, and the stuff that's becoming more and more popular. but really from the YouTube space where some of these guys have legitimately revolutionized the business world because they built a following, and then now they've built all these different businesses off of that one following, right? One that I watch all the time, or a group of guys that I watch all the time, is Guggen Squad, and they took this model of five YouTubers, five separate YouTubers getting together doing this, and then they created a loyal following, made it into one of the biggest fishing brands there is now. Well, then they said, "Hey, if we can do it there, let's do it in the golf industry." Same guys put together Good, and now they're doing the exact same thing in the golf industry with Good. They take five guys, now it's more, but they take them, they put them together. Everybody builds their own following. But then they have stuff together, and now they're launching their own brand again outside of just the content. And they have certain loyal followers that every time they say something, boom, they show up. And it's because they're authentic. When they go to, for the golfers, when they go to Garrett Clark's YouTube channel, you get the same guy as you get when you turn on Good. It's the same guy.
Yep.
If you meet him out in person, I've heard, same guy. It's the same guy. And everybody's invested in his life because of who he is. And then they go and meet him. They buy shirts. They buy hats. They buy stuff from him. It's like I said, again, before, I've said the same thing. If you're a small business, don't worry about how many followers you have. Because if you have 1,000 loyal customers, that's a giant small business.
Correct. And then within those 1,000, if you truly understand everything about that customer, what that ideal client avatar looks like, you can go duplicate them. You can go find them. But when you know exactly how that person ticks, in this day and age, marketing is even easier than it ever was. In the past, when you used to put something in a newspaper, put it on a billboard, put it on a TV commercial, we don't know who's truly interacting and making purchases because you see those things. But guess what? In social media, you throw an ad up, a person comments or clicks, there is analytics to easily be able to see the trail that they went through to eventually make a purchase.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you're exactly right. I've said this jokingly all the time, is I use Facebook as my Google. I'll say something a few times, on the phone, let it listen to me, because we all know the phones are listening to you. I'll say something a few times. Hey, I'm about to start looking into this. I'm about to start looking into this. And then I'll get on Facebook. I'll find an ad that has something to do with that, and I'll click on it. And then I'll get another one. I'll click on that one. I'll click on that one, to where whatever it is I'm going to look into, some sort of lead generation software, some sort of podcasting software, some sort of AI, whatever it might be, whatever it is that I want to look at, I want to look at different services. And me being me, I want to look at 3 or 4 of them. I'm going to go and click a bunch of ads. And then Facebook is going to, boom, they're going to give me all the competitors. And I've tried doing the same thing on Google, where I'm like, hey, who is the best competitor of X, Y, or Z? And I'm going to get 1, maybe 2 good competitors. But it's going to be a lot of the same thing, or sponsored, or whatever, that is not exactly what I want. But Facebook's, it's boom, 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 boom. And I can look at 10 different competitors of the exact same thing within 2 minutes.
It's really interesting you say that, because people like either love it or hate it. And I would argue that at the end of the day, even if our computers and technology is listening to us, they're putting exactly what we want to see in front of us. I mean, it's hard to argue against that.
Yeah, it wouldn't be there if you didn't want it.
Exactly. I sure as heck don't want to see an ad about something I have no interest in. So, yeah, that's exactly what I'm saying. Again, knowing your ideal client avatar, how you can build marketing that speaks exactly to their every pain point, their every need. Then all of a sudden they're watching your content, they're consuming your content. They're like, man, that's me. That maybe this guy can help me. Oh man, I'm kind of watching and consuming this guy. I like this guy. And so it just becomes building trust. And that again is an interesting concept for a lot of people that maybe in the baby boomer crowd is looking and saying, what is this social media? What is this? But reality is it's actually a really good tool to building know, like, and trust without someone ever actually meeting you.
Oh, absolutely. And I don't think it's necessarily just boomers. I think that working in an industry that I work in or consult in, um, boomers are a big part of it. And you'd be surprised how many boomers are way more advanced than I am at technology. It's just, again, it's interest. Now we're able to see how wide people's interests are. You can go on Facebook, you can go on LinkedIn, you can go on any of these platforms and find people that have the same identity or the same, not the same identity, but same interest as you. You can go and get a group of people on Facebook. Go look at Facebook groups that say, I have my right big toe is bigger than my left big toe. If that's something that you care about, you can probably go find a group for it and talk about it, right? But again, it's internalizing, understanding yourself and understanding who you are. If you want to do anything well, you have to know what it is you're trying to improve. If you don't know those numbers, if you don't know your goal, and I'm not a big goal setter, I'm more of a journey kind of guy, but if you don't know where you're going, you're never going to get there. If you don't know what you're trying to drive to get there, you're never going to get there, right? It's all about understanding internally who you are, being honest about who you are, and understanding that you want to change something internally. And then understanding the external, how people see you, what it takes to do those things, and all of, and then everything we've talked about follows that. But it starts with that, like you said, the why, the how, all of that stuff. It starts with internal commitment.
Well, and so once you get a golfer performing at the level that they want to be, then we've established, we'll call equilibrium for them. And so we need to know what that looks like from a movement perspective. We also need to know what that looks like from a ball data perspective. TrackMan, how much spin, what's your launch, what's your smash factor. So we know what baseline looks like. And then when you're practicing and it's an off day, you can take a look at the numbers and be like, okay, spin rate's a little high today. And then you look at the video and you can say, oh, this pattern's off a little bit, which is affecting my spin rate. You start putting the puzzle together, right? And bringing it back to equilibrium. Because golf is about minimizing your bad shots, right? How good are your bad shots? But then in business, it's the same thing. You have KPIs, you have a good sales month, you have a bad sales month. Well, what are the difference in the KPIs in the 2 months so you can then go fix those problems, find the bottleneck, and go fix it?
And sometimes when you're doing that, when you're examining those performance data or whatever it might be, it can actually unlock when you know what baseline is, when you know what good looks like. Sometimes the mistakes, sometimes the bad stuff unlocks new potential. Because when you go back and look at it, you're like, oh, well, I did this bad, but it turned out good. Let's figure that out. Let's dive into it. Let's understand that. So, in golf terms, the other day I saw that Bryson DeChambeau shot a 62 and said that was one of the worst 62s I've ever shot. He said, I played terrible and shot 62. Right? So, even though baseline wasn't there, he was below his baseline, he performed well.
Absolutely.
And sometimes going in and diving into that. So when you get into this routine of always striving for improvement and this routine of looking back at what you're doing, right? Understanding, hey, why did I do this? Hey, why did I do this? Why did I do this? Right? From a referee perspective. Why was I in that position? Did I make the right call there? Oh, okay. Oh, that was borderline. Why did I, in that moment, why did I make that call? Even though it was borderline, did I make it because of something that happened earlier or something, how I was feeling, right? Or in golf, why did I miss that putt? I've made that putt 1,000 times. Was it my stroke? Was it an internal situation in my mental game? Whatever, right? When you get in a habit of examining, self-diagnosing, whatever you want to call it, you can unlock new potential that you didn't even know was there.
Absolutely. You referenced putting. I'll make this one a really simple reference. I tell golfers all the time there's really three components that matter in putting: it's line, speed, read. Did you hit your line with the correct speed? And then did you make the right read? There are days where you will go around a golf course and you'll hit your line, you'll hit your speed, and you have a poor read. But if you aren't evaluating that you had poor reads all day, you think you putted poorly because you didn't make many putts. But I would argue you executed your line and your speed right all day. You're a great putter. We just need to get a little bit better at reading. And then there's days when you hit your line, you hit your speed, you have a good read, but there's also imperfections in greens. Greens are not 100% true. You can put the same putt down from 10 feet with a stimp meter, roll the ball down, and 9 out of 10 go in. There's imperfection. So, being a great self evaluator is such an important process in business and in physical development as an athlete.
Yeah, I mean, in when I would play in tournaments, we would it could be a blessing and a curse to sit there on the putting green and get ready for the tournament, to sit there and get ready to that speed. Obviously, higher level tournaments, the golf course speed and the putting green are going to be the practice green. They're going to be pretty similar, but at just your average course that you go to, are they always that similar? Not normally. And there's understanding performance wise, hey, I'm 3 holes in. I've left the last 3 putts short. Okay. It's a little bit slower today. I've got to make a change now, or my day's going to be under what I expect. I'm going to underperform. Or, hey, I've been doing something great all day, and then all of a sudden, boom, out of nowhere, why did that happen? Okay, I see this green's elevated. It's exposed to the wind. It's a little bit faster. That's why my speed was off. I can revert back to what I was doing earlier, and it's okay. Understanding all the things that go in there. Again, that's why I do think that coaching has to be a part of elevating your performance, not just from a selfish standpoint of I coach and I help and I love helping, but from a standpoint of you can't see everything. You're not going to think about every little thing. Sometimes you have to have somebody there to bounce ideas off of, to say, hey, this is where I'm at. This is where I'm at mentally. I'm thinking this. And that person just catches that one little thing and then it all clicks. It's
Absolutely.
so hard to be like perfect when it comes to self-diagnosing. You have to have that outside perspective.
Correct. And that's where great dialogue comes in. I had a college female golfer last year. She was telling me that basically ball striking was amazing tee to green, but she wasn't making the 8 to 15 footer birdie putts. And the first thing I did is diagnose the technique by asking her, like, okay, do you miss the left to right breakers, right to left breakers? Visually, is there one that you're uncomfortable with? And we identified that it was one. So then it was breaking down, okay, is it a technique issue or is it a visualization of like where I need to aim and see this putt go into the hole? And it turned out it was totally procedural. The way that she thought pre-shot, pre-putt was affecting her. We talked through it, taught her how to talk through it from a self-talk perspective going into the shot. The next day, she made 6 birdies and had the most birdies she'd ever had in a college round. And so it was pretty cool just to see that it was a conversation. She was thinking it was a technique issue or putting stroke needed worked on. It had nothing to do with that. But if she had not been able to have an open line of communication with me, I don't know that we would have ever diagnosed that.
Absolutely. And that's what it is in, I mean, I don't know how many different areas, right? There's so many little intricate things that when you're trying to take your performance to absolute peaks, that's why you see professional athletes have teams, right? You have teams of people. They don't have one. They don't have one coach or one person. They have a team because there's so many intricacies to getting the best out of yourself. So many different things that go into that true peak performance. Again, let's go in the golf realm. It's been known forever that people have swing coaches. Phil Mickelson had swing coach, short game coach. mental coach. Then he's got his caddy for on-course performance, right? There's all kinds of different people that are around him. And then you got to factor in the agents who are making sure the business side is working. The business side's working, the swing's working, the on-course is working, the
They've got a
brain's working.
trainer and they've got a chiropractor, a physio.
Yeah, they got a massage therapist. They got a movement specialist. They got they got 47 different people on their team.
And when they're truly all communicating together, it's a beautiful thing.
Well, and so let's take, this isn't going to air for a while, but Dustin Johnson just won, right, on Live. And he's like, I didn't touch a golf club all off season. And then he comes back and wins, and it's because he knows, like you said earlier, he knows his baseline.
Yep.
And then he's got a team around him that's been around him forever. I live in Myrtle Beach, so obviously, Dustin's my guy, and I know that who his team is around here, but he's got the team that's been with him since college.
Yeah.
Through all the ups and downs, they've been with him. They know his baseline, and they know how to make him perform. So that when it's time, it doesn't matter how rusty he is. Boop, push the button. Everybody says, all right, cool, let's reset. Here's how we do it. A, B, C, D, bang, 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 performance.
Well, and so in reference to that, 2 weeks ago, Wyndham Clark won at the AT&T PGA Tour event, and which ended up being 54 holes, and he shot at 60 on the last day to set the course record, I believe. And he played unbelievable. And he was describing how he works on his swing pre-round, and he said every time I hit balls, I might come out and I might be hitting big fades initially. So then what I do during that practice or that range session is I try to hit big draws because I'm always trying to bring the ball flight back to equilibrium. And I thought it was a good reference for calibration. That's what I speak to. We're always trying to calibrate back to equilibrium baseline in our practice sessions once you're at an elite performance level.
No, I like that word. I like calibrate because emotionally too, especially delivering yourself right on a Zoom call or on a phone call or whatever it is, you got to get back to equilibrium before you start again. Whether it's, hey, I've been interviewing for a new position. I want to take my career to the next level. I want to go from just a sales rep to a manager, right? And they're interviewing for several manager roles. And before every single interview, if you don't get back to equilibrium, there's going to be differences in your performance as you go. It may get better. It may get worse. But if you're not getting back to it, you're going to have those effects that are pulling on you. Same thing in your sales calls. If you're a sales person, if you don't get back to equilibrium and you've had 4 or 5 no's in a row and all of those are pulling you down, or all of those things are making you more anxious, or whatever it might be, you're going to perform worse. Or it could be the opposite, where you've had 5 or 6 yeses in a row, and now you're on this super high, and then you call the next person, and you blow their eardrums out because you're so excited, and the person's like, "Go away! Who are you? You're scary."
Those phone calls are mutually exclusive, but you're running on your high. Absolutely. This goes to the sales calls. This goes to how I walk into a basketball game. When we speak to calibration, for example, in a basketball game, if you know who the two teams are and you know that tonight it's going to be a fast-paced game, that's going to have different implications potentially on how I referee that game. Right? Or there might be a little bit more physical post play in a game. Again, you have to calibrate to understand that, but then switch it to the coach or the sales call. You have to figure out how this guy ticks, and you have to figure out tonality and how you're going to either match him at his heightened level or how you're going to bring him down back to his equilibrium so you can actually hear each other.
No, absolutely. It's one of those things that, like you said, that equilibrium part is so important, and matching, right? And if you don't go to an equilibrium, there's no way to match, right? Because if you're at a level that's up here on a sales call or just in a conversation, let's take it the basketball, right? Reference. And you've got a coach that is super flamboyant, super exaggerative, whatever, and you've got one coach that is super chill, super relaxed. And you're going to talk to those, you can't talk to them the same way, or you can't expect them to act the same way. Just because this coach is jumping up and down doesn't mean that you should throw him out. But
Right.
if the super relaxed one is jumping up and down, something's going on, right? Because that's not equilibrium. It's the distance from them. That's
Yeah.
the peaks and valleys are the distance from that equilibrium, right? And if you don't know where that equilibrium is, how do you know what the peaks and valleys
Yeah. It's quite honestly, it's one of my favorite parts about refereeing, having to learn how to deal with different personalities. And I had done that longer. I've done that since 2011. And then getting into the online business, I've had to sell myself a lot more. And the sales has been so second part of my career. And I will tell you, the conversations I have with coaches has taught me so much about how to sell because you have to understand how to match a person's tonality or understand, is this person type A, are they not, how do they want to be spoken to receive the information. Because when you have a guy that's going crazy in a basketball game, if I can come in and ask a question that just instantly brings down his energy level and tonality, and now he's listening to me and he's like, whoa, Andrew's listening to me, he can talk my ear off at that point and I can walk away and he's happy because he got me to listen. But I didn't really say all that much. I asked one question. I was like, Coach, what did you see on that play? He's going to bleed out and tell me everything. And then guess what? The basketball is going the other way. I'm gone.
No, and I think that goes back to, what we started the conversation off with is the social media and being able to go nationally with a business or being able to go internationally with a business or just reach your state in a different way than you could have. Let's say you're, a produce company. Well, you may be able to go from just having a farm stand to, I don't know why I said produce, but you may be able to go from just having a farm stand to being able to deliver to 3 counties over, and you've never reached 3 counties over, right? It doesn't matter how big you're expanding. Social media allows you to expand, but on that same level, you're reaching people you've never reached before, and you have to understand they're gonna be different. Just like you
Absolutely.
said with the coaches, right? You know, I'm from North Carolina. I live in South Carolina. Obviously, I have very different day-to-day life than somebody that lives in Nebraska. I've got a friend of mine that just sent me a picture the other day, and he lives in Montana, and there's snow all over the ground. And I'm like, dang, it must be cold there. It's 70 degrees here, buddy. You know, like he has a different view of life daily, not just in general, but day to day. Things are different for him than they are for me. And if I go at him and be like, oh yeah, man, sunny and 75 down here, da, 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 I'm starting off the call potentially making him feel a certain way just because I'm in my situation, right? And that's where I say perspective is so important. You have to understand who you are, but you also have to understand how you're making someone see you. And it's just like in the golf swing. How does this little thing internally show up on camera or show up in the numbers?
Right. No, I mean, you're speaking to it to a T. So, how someone's going to perceive information is all the perspective that you bring. And so when you come in and they can tell that you're listening and you're matching them, again, they're able to hear you. Versus,
And
all right, Andrew, let's get to the price. Let's get to the price. Like, no, I first need to know if I can help you.
I mean, that's everything right there, right? Like, not just jumping down somebody's throat to say, oh, yeah, I can help. But can you? Like,
Right.
it's one of those things, like, if somebody thinks exactly the same as you probably can't help them.
No.
Because you've got the same point of view. You've got everything the same. There's not going to be any change if you're both in the exact same direction, in the same spot, everything. Like, even if somebody has been doing something one day longer than you, they may have a different perspective. And it may give you that one day extra knowledge, whatever it is. Somebody said that the other day. Like, they were talking about, I think they were looking at like AI type stuff, and they were saying, man, everybody I talk to is like a new agency or whatever. And he said, I feel like they're like 2 weeks more advanced than me, and that's about it. And I'm just like, yeah, that's probably not what you want in an expert that you're paying. Is like that they've only been doing it 2 weeks longer than you. So that it's one of those things that like that's exactly what it is. Is now that's not to say that time in the industry or time in the business is the most important thing. But it's still it's that perspective of if you're coming off as an expert and that you know everything there is to know, you can't have only been in it for 2 weeks. If you come off as saying, I'm brand new, but look what I've done in this, we're growing this fast because of we do this different and this different and this different, because this was a hole in the industry that needed to be filled, and we're brand new and we're filling this hole. Those are two vastly different things.
Absolutely. Yeah,
And,
no, I mean, what I've got to benefit from in the coaching model that I work under is I'm breaking down film way more than I did when I worked with someone in person. And so the amount of clips and footage that I have seen has created schematically an obvious way or pathway forward for me to efficiently and effectively help students upgrade their golf swing. Um, I see the golf swing in a completely different viewpoint now because, again, I've broken down film enough to identify what problems have the biggest impact on solid contact, for example. And then I now know prescribing X drill gets the best results for the majority of people. But if that one's not working, I can course correct and go to this one. And so it is insane by doing it this way how much I've been able to speed up even my ability to coach more effectively.
well, and that's what it is using those perspectives in the right way. Because when I first was undergoing lessons at 19, 18, 19 years old, whenever it was, that I got my first set of lessons. I think I was like 18, right? I'd only been playing for a short amount of time, got my lessons at Golf Tech, right? If you don't know what Golf Tech is, they were kind of the first like video your swing and do things that was like
Yep.
global or national, right? They were the big brand that videoed things. But again, this is 16 years ago, 15 years ago, whatever. It wasn't known. Things weren't known as well at that point. But like you're saying, you've taken all these clips, all these things. Now you're getting super effective, super efficient, and seeing things differently because you understand how it comes across in video versus in person. Because when I did it, and this again is where perspective comes in, internally versus externally. Externally, it looked perfect. I was hitting the exact spots they wanted me to hit, yet I couldn't hit the ball. Again, the numbers were zero. So it didn't matter how great the perspective of the camera was,
Right.
because the ball won't go nowhere.
Exactly.
The ball was doing the wrong thing. So again, it's all the measurements, all the key metrics, not just the visual, not just what you feel, all of it, right? Everything has to align to get that peak performance.
Yeah. Well, and anytime a student's going through that developmental phase, I explain to them up front, look, this is what it's going to go like. There is going to be an awkward phase. When I introduce something new, it's going to feel awkward. That's expected. So, again, we've got to look at the video. We've got to make sure that you're doing it right. And if you do it right with the correct technique enough, eventually it's going to start feeling mechanical. And then once you get through the mechanical phase, mastery starts to happen where it feels natural. And so, if you give that expectation up front, it again gets them to buy in to know, okay, it's going to feel awkward. It's going to feel mechanical. And then eventually I do achieve a natural feel to the golf swing. But if you
And
don't know that up
right
front, again, you revert back to old tendencies much faster. You give in.
No, that's the full circle moment right there. Is it's the buying in. You have to start with buying in, making the decision of changing or elevating your performance internally, and fully buying in, fully committing. It's full circle right back to that same thing we talked about. You have to buy in. That is what the key is to ultimately getting where you want to go. Because looking back now, talking about what happened then, they were trying to put me into something that I didn't buy into. So I couldn't change properly because my number one strength at the time was how far I hit the ball. And the only thing they wanted to worry about was comparing me to people that hit it straighter. And those people didn't have the same skill set that I did. And I didn't buy in because I'm like, I don't want to get shorter. I don't want to do those things, right? Even though I was doing them because they told me to, and I was 19 years old. I'm not going to disagree with somebody just because I wasn't my personal. I didn't have the personality I have now, and that's it. Though I didn't buy in, and I think that's the perfect full circle moment for this whole thing. Is looking back, you're exactly right. That's why it didn't work. That's why change has to happen from the beginning. Not just setting expectations, but buying in.
100%. I mean, when I'm going through a coaching experience with a student, it starts with a two-way interview. Call it the sales call, but I'm interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing me. And I know if I get them across the finish line to where they've chosen to move forward with me as their coach, I know they're going to show up, they're going to put in the work, they're going to be coachable. So if I've got that in a student and then I set expectations, we can go pretty far together. And it's a beautiful thing because they've bought in.
That's perfect. Absolutely perfect, man. I thank you so much for your time. Um, we could keep going on the golf swing technically, and we'd lose everybody because I can talk about the golf swing, the baseball swing, and all that stuff for hours and hours. But man, shout out your social media, shout out the app, the website, all the good stuff. Let the people know where they can find you.
Absolutely. So again, I'm Coach Andrew Banner. That's my handle on social media. You can find me on Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, YouTube. And then my website is forgedswing.com.
Awesome. We'll put all the links in the description as well. But man, I again just want to thank you so much for your time and insight. And again, I got a ton out of this. I know the listeners are going to get a ton out of this, and I just want to thank you. For you guys at home, stay tuned next week. Just like this week, we're gonna bring another banger. We're gonna switch sports this time, though. We've had a little golf, had a little football. We got baseball coming up, guys. Stay tuned.